It's just great. So, how do we manage the acute IC flare? Well, I think that the first thing we have to do is understand what's going on with the flare. Why is it that the flare is occurring to begin with? And then, from all the background that we have thus far laid, we want to now try to figure out, well, what are the best things that we can do in order to move ahead toward managing the pain. So that's part of the process here today. And we'll see if we can. And we've talked about this yellow hand. I'm glad people are now getting into it, because that's really will be helpful in terms of you guys being able to raise your hand to type in a question and explore that. The Facebook interaction has been good, and that's another really good way for us to be able to interact. So I just wanted to do a quick review. This is just basically underlining and underscoring the energy science basics that we've talked about in session 1 and 2. That first of all, nature is described in qualities, that disease is actually the imbalance of qualities, that interstitial cystitis is basically an imbalance of the hot and mobile qualities, and therefore is a pitta-vata disorder. The hot quality of pitta and the mobile quality of vata gives you all of the symptoms of not only the chronic IC, but also that of the acute flare. We also said that the origin of all disease is in the GI tract. It comes from the GI tract, and this is in contrast to the present contemporary way of looking, the molecular way of looking at IC, which essentially says we don't know the molecules that cause this problem, but once we find them, we'll be able to get to a solution. The problem will be that you'll never get to a solution from a molecular standpoint, that it will be a continual Band-Aid from which you operate. That we also said that qualities that make up nature make everything up. Foods are included in that, and so are you. So if the same qualities that make up foods are the same qualities that you are, then obviously you will be foods and foods will be you. In other words, whatever you take in will add or delete from the qualities that you have in your own body. So if you take a lot of the hot quality or the mobile quality, then those will be added to your body in terms of an energy sense, and that will either cause disruption or increase in flares, or it will delete or decrease those qualities and lead to healing. So we said that real healing takes time. This is not something that will occur next month for you, but as you do more and more and more of this work, that this will bring about true remission in terms of your symptoms. We said that nutrition and aloe are foundational to therapy. Nutrition stops the qualities from being added that are disruptive, and aloe vera helps bring about balance not only in the body but in the mind, and begins cooling you off. And we also said that the mind and body are intimately spliced. You cannot separate the mind and the body. What is body is mind, what is mind is body. And so they work in concert. Therefore, if you see having symptoms of irritability in the pelvic area because of your IC, and pain in the vagina and burning on urination, those same symptoms are also reflective of your mood. And so you'll see having irritability, emotionally distraught, not feeling or feeling agitated with respect to your complex of symptoms. We also talked then in session 2 about Agni, or the digestive power or strength, and that if one wants to heal IC, you have to address digestive strength or Agni. You cannot completely get rid of that, of the mobile and hot qualities, unless you digest better. And we said that if the Agni is weak, then you cannot even digest herbs for healing. So we'll talk about some of those herbs in this session. And if your digestive strength is not good, if it's weak, then even the ability to digest these herbs will be impaired. Food intolerances such as gluten and lactose intolerance are actually not really true allergies, in the sense that they're really related to poor or weak Agni. The GI tract symptoms that one has after eating, such as bloating or gassiness or problems with heaviness after eating, are all related to weak Agni. We also said that the status of the Agni is determined by, 1, the degree of appetite that you have. So if you're hungry and ready for the experience of food, that's a good sign. It says that your Agni is good, it's strong. And it's also determined by the appearance of the tongue, and that's why we suggested that tongue scraping in the morning is a good way to start off the day. It not only enhances Agni, but it also gives you an idea of how your physiology is doing. If you're doing a cleanse and all of a sudden your tongue turns like a snowfield, that implies that you're getting rid of a lot of debris. You're getting a lot of ama out of the system. And you won't be freaked out when you see that, because it's really just a true expression of what the body is going through. It's a powerful way of monitoring yourself. Poor Agni leads to ama. So ama is this undigested debris, this charred debris from our campfire that gets stuck in the GI tract, but it also gets disseminated with the mobile quality of vata to other areas of the body, such as, in the case of IC, the pelvis and the vagina. And here is where ama holds these qualities, the hot and mobile qualities, in place, so that you can't get rid of them, because they're locked. They're locked with this sludge called ama that has come from the GI tract. There are many, many, as we talked about, symptoms of weak Agni, but all of the solutions for weak Agni revolve around lifestyle and herbal ingestion. So I just wanted to spend just a brief time on this issue of chronic versus acute. You know, for many, when they experience IC, they have ups and downs, so that it's like having a urinary tract infection but not having a bacteria to show for it. When they culture the urine is negative. It has no growth. That means you don't have a bacterial problem. You have an IC problem. You have the hot and mobile quality stuck in the pelvis and in the bladder particularly, leading to the problem of an acute, what we would call an acute flare. Now, sometimes people who have acute flares, sometimes they go on to just feeling that way all the time. But as we showed in the diagram with with the wavy lines, these waves actually occur even in that acute situation where you're having a lot of symptoms. So even then, there will be maybe some good days, good afternoons, bad afternoons. And so even in the acute situation that is long-standing, there will be this wave-like activity. Now, for any type of chronic problem, there should be chronic tools. And the chronic tools that we've talked about are the nutritional formats, the incompatible food combinations, the tools that stoke or buck up acne, and using aloe vera gel. These are all standard things that one should be looking at to be doing all the time. Let me repeat that. You do these all the time. In other words, you're changing your lifestyle. And what's happening as you do that is you get to participate in the management of your chronic IC. Now, there will be those spikes where you'll have these exacerbations of symptoms. You get irritable, you get pain in the pelvis, you have burning on your urination, it won't stop, you can't do anything about it. That's what we're talking about today. But you still do the chronic tools. You don't stop those just because you're having an acute flare. So then we'll add these specific methods as we're going to talk about. So what is a flare? A flare is just the recurrence of urinary symptoms after a symptom-free period. I don't think I have to tell this audience what a flare is, but I think we all have to kind of begin with a commonality and a common understanding before we go any further. There can also be this recurrence on the top of a baseline of symptoms. So say you're having a lot of burning and etc., there may be an exacerbation from that baseline to a worsening of symptoms. So usually these flares are associated with other problems such as bowel or joint or muscle symptoms. Sometimes one of our participants said, I'm having symptoms of pain in the joint, and it's getting difficult to clear. And my bias would be is that that's really just an expression of the IC, even though it might be associated with a trauma that may have happened. So here we are. We're back to this diagram again. If you don't get anything out of this webinar, remember this diagram. This is a very important diagram to help you understand where you are and where you're going. So what happens when you start having these urinary tract infections on a repetitive basis is that it's actually ramping you up over a period of years to a point where you start having what's called the flare. And these flares occur on an intermittent but seemingly regular basis. And here are the expressions of you're just below the ceiling, you're just making it, and then all of a sudden, increase in the mobile and hot qualities, bang, you've got another, quote, urinary tract infection. But now we know that these episodic episodes are merely what are called in the IC community flares. And it's very interesting. If you look at the word flare, it's just so characteristic and so descriptive of the process that you're going through, because it's just like one of these flares that you see from the sun, just this enormous amount of energy just exuded from the surface of the sun and going out for thousands and thousands, if not millions of miles away from the sun. And that's exactly what's happening in your body. So, let me take this off. So, this is another very important principle. There is no pain in the body without the mobile quality, because Vata carries the pain anywhere in the body. And this characteristic pain of the mobile quality is kind of something that you can't quite put your finger on. It seems like it's here at one time, it's there at another time. It's not quite easy to really nail down. And sometimes it can be quite fleeting. And those are the characteristics of mobile-like quality pain. Now, the hot quality, on the other hand, is one that you're all familiar with, and that's that hot, searing pain in the urethra, in the vagina, in the bladder area. And this is pitta-like pain. It's very penetrating. It's very hot, and it's the debilitating pain that really causes the pain of IC. And as we said, ama, this undigested material that can be disseminated everywhere, but happens in IC to be in the bladder, and what that does is it holds the qualities there. It doesn't allow the free elimination of these qualities from the bladder. This is from an energetic standpoint now. But what happens is these mobile and hot qualities were once, early on in your course, they would be dissipated. You'd bleed them off. But now, along with the increase in these hot and mobile qualities, this ama now comes into play and starts holding these qualities in the pelvis so that you can't eliminate them, and then you're always up against the ceiling, always being held in a suspended state, waiting for the next flare. So the acute management of a flare is, first of all, and we've talked about this on the blogs, but castor oil is a very medicinal agent for anything that's hot and occurring in the body. Castor oil, when applied externally on the skin, is cooling. It will release and let the heat out and dissipate the heat that's occurring in the pelvis. The hot quality, but it has a hot quality when taken internally. So it's cold externally, internally it's hot, and that's why it can be such a good for as a bowel purgative or cleansing the bowel, because it tends to be hot inside the body and tends to irritate the small bowel, so that there's increased peristalsis, increased bowel activity, and then hence the release from the bowel. So applied topically over the bladder area. You know, we used to talk about bladder packs, bladder castor oil packs, but actually I think it's just as easy and more simplified, and I always like simple better, is to apply the castor to the skin in a fairly healthy dose. I think it's useful to warm it before you start applying it. It will move across the skin much easier. And you apply it from the belly button to the pubic bone, and you get the entire lower part below the belly button, the lower part of the abdomen, essentially layered with or spread with the castor. Now you can then use or apply with your with your fingers mint and sandalwood or lavender or jasmine to various marma points. And we'll talk about this in a minute. But marma points are essentially acupuncture points. There's no difference really between marma and acupuncture points. They're one in the same. So when we talk about marma, realize that you're essentially doing pressure point acupuncture. So here are bladder energy points. There are 6 of them in the lower abdomen below the belly button. There are 2 that are between well, let's start out. There's 1 between the belly button and the pubic bone, right in the midline at the midpoint between belly button and pubic bone. There's a marma point there. That's the primary bladder marma point. If you feel pulsation when you press in that point, you're a little bit too high. You should be below the bifurcation of the aorta, and if you're feeling the pulsation, that's actually the aorta, and you're actually a little bit too high. So go a little bit lower, and you're right in the right spot. Out laterally from that point that I've just talked about, there are 2 other points, and these are points for the bladder as well, and these can also be used as treatment points. Right above the belly button, this lower arrow is another marma, and this marma is right at the belly, right at the pubic, just above the pubic bone. And out laterally from that are 2 other marma points on either side of midline. So these 2 points also can be used for marma point therapy. So we've outlined 6 points. 1 in the midline between the belly button and the pubic bone, right in this area, and 2 on either side of it, and then the ones next to the pubic bone and out laterally. So these 6 points can be used on and massaged after you've taken castor and applied it to the entire area here in the infra or the below the belly button area. This castor can be left on for a long period of time. The problem with any oil that's used is that if it gets on the clothing, it's very difficult to get out, if not impossible. So you can use a towel. You can use a towel over this area, or you can use some old shirt that you don't want. But just beware that if you're starting to use this castor therapy, that you want to be sure that you're going to not ruin some clothes. So, okay, now we've got the castor on. Now we know about the marmas. What do we do with these marmas? Oh, I forgot. A couple of other points. Here's a marma on the inside of the elbow at the crease of the elbow. There's the crease. And right on the inside, there's another marma. There's another marma, another acupuncture point, here right on the top of the foot as the leg starts going into the foot. And you'll find 2 tendons on either side. That marma lies right behind or right between those 2 tendons on the top of the foot, right as the ankle joins the foot. And then there's a malleolus, or a bony protuberance on the inside and the outside of the ankle, and there's a marma right behind those two bony protuberances on the outside and on the inside of the foot. So now we've got all these marma points. What are we going to do with them? Well, the next thing is, we talked about the question of a heating pad and whether you can use a heating pad for warmth. I think for using a hot therapy like a heating pad on top of the pelvis, which is already hot, I think that it can be counterproductive. But some people have reported good results with the heating pad. So why does this work? Well, there's a cold quality, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's why this kind of therapy, heating pad, can be helpful. We'll get to this marma in just a second, but I just wanted to show you that one of the things we want to do with respect to these these qualities is we want to stop the imbalancing qualities of the hot and mobile, right? We want to stop these. And because we don't want to put more of these imbalancing qualities into the GI tract. And that's what we talked about in session 1. We don't want to add more, so we follow the nutritional formats, and we make sure that incompatible food combinations are not worsening this hot quality, because that's oftentimes what happens with incompatible food combinations. But now that we've stopped this and we're improving Agni, which is over here in the body, now we want to start releasing these pent-up qualities. We want to start getting rid of them. And that's the whole process of healing your IC, is to start getting rid of these pent-up qualities that are hanging around, stuck with ama in the pelvis, bladder, and vaginal area. So this is the foundation by which we can start healing IC. Now, this is a diagram that shows what happens when we start accumulating qualities in disease. These qualities accumulate over time, and the cold, the hot, the dry, and light qualities are then, with the mobile quality, taken to certain areas of the body, in your case, IC, and then they show up, and they may even show this subtle quality, which it just doesn't seem like things are wrong for a while. They just don't amount to anything. There are no symptoms, and then all of a sudden you start having symptoms of the classic flare. But the reason that that's happening is because of the qualities involved. This is why there's a cumulative effect to these qualities. So the cold quality is the first to become increased in amount. And as that cold quality mounts up, particularly during the winter time, it's really important to stay warm during the winter time so you don't aggravate more of these qualities as they accumulate. This is kind of like the first line of defense, so to speak. But once this mobile quality is involved and is taking the cold and hot and dry and light qualities to the bladder, then you're going to have to eliminate those in some way. And that's where this whole thing of healing occurs, is because you're eliminating or removing these hot qualities through the urine and through the bowel, through the skin. This is in essence the whole process that occurs with respect to clearing IC. So now we're at a point where we're going to release this stuck pelvic energy. We now know our marma points. We know them on the upper extremity. We know them on the lower extremity. How can we get rid of this pent-up energy? So a vaginal medicated tampon is a great way to start urging the pelvis to release these pent-up qualities. Shatavari is a herb that is cooling to the body. It can be embedded in an oil that can then be melted, and then a tampon soaked in this shatavari oil, and then the tampon can be directly applied to the vaginal lining. So Tiktagrita is this material that is melted in a saucepan. You saturate the tampon with the oil that's been melted, and then you insert it into the vagina. Keep this in for 2 hours, and if still moist, the next time you can maybe keep it in for an additional hour. You can use this on a regular basis, maybe as often as twice a day if you'd like, just to be sure that you're getting the effect. This Tiktagrita is available through the Ayurvedic Institute. I don't know. I've looked on Amazon. I've also looked at Banyan Botanicals, but it's not available. But the Ayurvedic Institute has it as a proprietary product. They make it. They have a dealer who makes it, and it's an excellent product to use. The website is ayurveda.com, and here's the link to a bit.ly link to the page that you can write down. And for review, when you're reviewing these slides, you'll be able to pick this up again. This is also extremely helpful for women who have vulvodynia. Vulvodynia is commonly associated with IC. We're using the vagina in order to deliver herbs to the pelvis in order to get the release to occur from the bladder. There are also other techniques that can directly apply herbs to the bladder lining, and many people who are suffering with severe IC symptoms use bladder installations anyway. I'm just saying that bladder installations using herbal therapy is much, much more targeted than simply using DMSO or heparin or bupivacaine or any of the other long-acting types of analgesics such as Marcaine. These kinds of therapies actually get and address the specific problem that's occurring in the pelvis, that is the problem of releasing these qualities from the bladder and in general the pelvis. Vaginal irrigation can also be done. What you can do is make a tea. You get these three herbs, Dashamula, Guduchi, and Gakshura, 1 tablespoon per cup of water. These herbs are added to the water when it's brought to a boil, and then the Dashamula, which is actually in a root form, is it's cut up root. You strain the root off. You cool off the tea so that it's at room temperature or body temperature, and then you add aloe vera gel after the tea is cooled, and then add, after you've placed it in an enema bag, take a half cup of the tea of the of sesame oil and put it into the tea. It will always sit on top of the tea in the bag, and so it will go in last. And you alternate this vaginal irrigation with and without the oil. So one day you'll take the tea and irrigate into the vagina. It's actually very simply looking at it as if you're doing a douche, except you're using it with a targeted medicated tea that is delivered to the vaginal lining. And then the oil is allowed to go in, and you can sit on the toilet in order for this to be delivered, and then you're done. You can use the Shatavari or the tampon that we talked about a little bit later, or you can use it on an every other day schedule. So you use the oil and the tea, as I've just described, on one day. The next day you would use the Shatavari soaked tampon. But then your vaginal irrigation on that day would be without the oil. And then the next day you would go back to the vaginal irrigation using oil, and maybe not use the Shatavari tampon that day. And then the next day you would use the vaginal irrigation without the sesame oil, and then use at that point in time the medicated tampon that we talked about. This kind of therapy of alternating the oil without the oil prevents the vaginal lining from getting too dry, because if you were just using the tea without the oil, there can be a real drying of the tissues, and then it would be really uncomfortable and sore after a period of time. So you'd want to be sure that you were using oil to prevent the dryness of the tissues. One word of caution about people who live in areas where there's no sewer system, but their house is on a septic system. You have to be careful with these oils, because these oils are not digested by bacteria in the septic system, and so the septic systems can be really wrecked if you don't watch what you're putting into the system. And so if you have a septic system that you're dealing with, then you're probably better off delivering the oil into a container that you then discard from in the garbage or whatever, rather than having that go into your septic field. When the frequency through which you do this kind of activity of tampon and vaginal irrigation, etc., you can do this daily until the flares subside. Always start and end with oil, however. Do not let yourself get too dry again, because of the dangers we've talked about. I wanted to talk a little bit about what herbs do, because they're not like pharma. They're not like the things that are presently being used in your doctor's office. They are very, very unique. And the ones that I've talked about here have a very unique properties in terms of being able to affect not only the body, but the mind as well. And this is in contrast to what Big Pharma has to offer you, because they're based on a molecular, not an energy science approach. And they will, over time, produce insights as to how to proceed with your healing. It's a very, very unique aspect of herbs that is really not, I think, talked a lot about, but it's a very important concept, because when you start doing things to the body for healing and using herbs, you'll start noticing and having clarity. You'll have periods of time of lucidness where you'll start saying, oh, I see how this works. Oh, I didn't realize that. You'll have insights that wouldn't occur otherwise. So this is a very unique part of herbal healing, but it's just the reason for it is because there is a mind-body effect by these herbs. Now, I wanted to go back a bit here to get to these Marma points. We started talking about them, but I think that the slide that I had was lost or dropped out, maybe in part because of this whole computer issue. But the issue here is that what you're looking for when you these 6 points, and the one on the elbow and the other one, the other 3 on the foot, should be massaged in a circular way with using these kinds of herbal essences. Mint, obviously, is cooling. Sandalwood, cooling. Lavender, cooling. Jasmine, cooling. So what you're doing is you're taking these essences, and now you've placed the castor on the lower abdomen between the belly button and the pubic bone, and now you're going to find these Marma points, and you're going to start in a circular way from right to left in a circular motion at these very specific points, and looking, as you're doing this, looking for tenderness, looking for discomfort, because the issue is the best pain relief therapy in this particular, in the acute flare, is using these Marma points. Let me repeat that. The best way to get pain relief is to use these Marma points to release the pent-up energy that is producing the pain in the beginning. Remember, pain is coming from the mobile quality. You're trying to release this mobile quality from the pelvis, and you're trying to release them through these Marma points. Now, having said that, you're going to be applying these these essences, these essential oils, these aromas, to these areas, and you're looking for pain. You're looking for discomfort. And so you're going to go superficially, going to feel how it feels. Doesn't feel bad, you go a little deeper, go a little deeper, go a little deeper, and see if you can find areas or trigger points, painful areas around these Marmas. And as you're doing that, what you're really looking for is discomfort of any kind, because obviously you got pain during your flare, right? Well, these points are going to be uncomfortable. Now, having said that, this is really important. Just because we've got 6 points outlined here doesn't mean that you can't have pain here or pain over here, pain right in here. So what I'm saying is, you become the detective. You become the searcher. You become the investigator looking for painful points in the pelvis, and find out which points are more uncomfortable for you than others. You know, many reasons, there are many reasons why doctors are kind of confused about IC until you get the diagnosis. But there, you know, the ovary sits right here, and this could just as well be a bladder point that is being painful. But because you go to the gynecologist or the urologist and they feel tenderness here, they say, oh, you've got something wrong with your ovary. But in reality, it's not your ovary, it's an IC flare. So the issue is, be your investigator to look for these points and try to find out where you can get the most bang for your dollar when you're starting to look around and seeking out these points. And this does not preclude, this does not eliminate the possibility of going to the extremities. You may find that you get pain. You may get pain here in these areas on palpation when you're doing this therapy. So, you know, when you're massaging these areas, start looking and being very sensitive about, oh, how does this feel? Is this giving me some relief? Because after a while, when you start doing this work, you'll actually literally start having fun. You'll start having, I mean, you won't be so freaked out about your complex of symptoms. It's going to take you some time, but the key is, become the really inquisitor, the real interested party of knowing more about your disease, knowing more about your body. How does this feel to you, body? And does this, does this feel good or does this feel bad? And if it feels bad, you know you got some work to do in that area. So the really, really important thing is, after a while, become a real questioner about your body. Now, one of the things that I can tell you is that the mind is always going to take you out to the woodshed. It's always going to be misleading to you. So the contrast to that is that the body will never, ever lead you astray. The sensations that the body gives you will never, ever lead you astray. So you can count on the body. It doesn't lead you down the primrose path like the mind will. The mind is got all kinds of different things, you know. It's got all kinds of agendas, belief patterns, prejudices, worn out stories that just don't serve you very well. So the important thing here is, you're doing this work, is you can trust the body. The body will always, always give you the truth. Just listen. Become a student of your body. And don't be freaked out about it, because your body is going to be the thing that will take you in the right direction. The other important principle that I wanted to leave you with is that the body wants to release these qualities. It wants to get rid of them. The key is we have to get out of the way, you know? So the thing about getting out of the way, you know, it's kind of a, it seems like kind of a theoretical concept, but in reality, getting out of the way means I do my nutritional format work, I pay attention to my incompatible food combinations, I do the lifestyle things around Agni, and then that's it. That's all I have to do. That's all I have to do. If you do this kind of work, you will be getting out of the way. The problem is that because we don't know about the energy work, and we're confused because we're told so many different crazy ideas, and we get involved in so many different threads on the internet, and what works for some and what doesn't work for another, and it just becomes a hodgepodge. I guarantee you, I absolutely guarantee you this, that if you do this work and you stay out of the confusing rhetoric that you're being fed all the time, this will work for you. This will do the job. But you have to, in other words, get out of the way. In other words, don't let the mind get involved, because when the mind starts getting involved, it starts stirring the soup, right? And what happens? The mobile quality starts getting more mobile, and then you start getting anxious and worried and fretful, and all of this is related to the mind, and what that translates into is the possibility for another flare. One of the questions in early on when we were talking about developing this course was it was a question about, I notice that I get into a flare much more easily when I'm anxious or I'm upset. And now you know why. The mobile quality the mind gets agitated. That's the mobile quality. The mind starts racing. It wants to finish. You know, it's in a race, right? And because it's in this race, you're involved in it. And since it's a mind-body connection, the mobile quality is not only being played out in your mind, it's being played out in your pelvis. It's being played out in your bladder, and wango, you get another flare. So that's how this all works. But, you know, once you now have this information, you're the commander of your ship. You are now totally empowered to do the work necessary in order to begin healing your IC. I guarantee you that. So, let's see here. So, what about your homework? So, let's review the energy points that we discussed in the presentation, and then create your emergency flare kit. This is like your kit that you keep in the back of your car if you happen to have it's 12 midnight and you're stuck on the side of the road and it's raining out. That's your emergency kit. And so this is what you're going to use. You're going to choose one of those oils. I have to say that sandalwood is pretty spendy. For a little vial that you can get at the Ayurvedic Institute, it'll cost about $30. But it goes a long way, but, you know, it's a bit spendy. Jasmine and lavender will be less expensive, and mint will be very inexpensive, and you can get that anywhere. But just be sure it's a relatively good quality oil. And these essential oils that you're going to be using are going to be used in small amounts right at the specific marma points that you're dealing with. The next thing is to get the herbs, and I talked to you about where you can get the herbs. The Tikta Grita, as I said, you can only get that at the Ayurvedic Institute. The other herbs, the Gaduchi, the Gakshura, and the Dashimula, those can be obtained in a powdered form or at Banyan Botanical, or you can also get them at the Ayurvedic Institute's line, and you have that bit.ly link. Just be sure that you don't get poor quality stuff. I mean, I know that these two companies have definitely quality materials, so I trust them, and I think that they'll be able to deliver you a good product. You get an enema bag. And the enema bag you can get at the Ayurvedic Institute. You can also get it online. You can get the IC Solutions has a site or has an enema bag that's available. And then you want to get some unrefined sesame oil at the grocery store. Don't get toasted sesame oil. Get unrefined sesame oil. In our neck of the woods, Spectrum is the company that makes has it on the shelf. It may be different for you in different locations in the country or world. So that's a wrap. Does anybody have any questions that you'd like to ask at this point in time? If you want to, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can type your question in, one or the other. Okay, well, it looks like if there are no other questions, then I think we can call it a day. This will be posted, as we talked about, at the